Do you know, I'm not a big fan of that word inspiration, because I think if you believe in the idea of inspiration, you sort of find yourself having to be inspired and waiting to be inspired. And I think that's a dangerous position to be in if you're a poet. You can't afford to be waiting for anything. You just have to get on with it. So I don't know that I had an inspiration for the book. In fact, I don't know if I knew what the book was going to be about until it was half written. And I think that's probably the way I've written all of the 9 books of poems that I've written, is that at a certain point you think, I see, something's going on here. There is a preoccupation. There is a sort of an undercurrent of connection. It might not be something that's very discernible, but there is an undercurrent of connection between certain poems. And then you have to decide if you want the whole book to lean into that, or in fact, if you want the whole book to resist it. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. So I would talk about maybe decision making as opposed to necessarily inspiration. But, the poems don't happen as a result of decisions. The poems happen as a result of heaven knows what. Because it's what I do, because it's the way my mind works, because I'm fascinated by language, because I can't help but see things in terms of imagery, because imagery is how I explain the world to myself, because of all of those reasons, and just because I really like knocking words together. It's great fun. And because of all of that, I write poems, and then I make books of poems not necessarily because of those things, but because of other things that arise during the process of writing many poems and thinking how might they fit together. It's called Infinity Pool, and the image is meant to I suppose represent an infinity pool, in that it goes right down to the end of the page. And if you've ever seen an infinity pool up close, you'll know that one of the edges of the pool is dropped to make it look as though it's not there, and to make it look as though the water is actually falling majestically into the landscape beyond. So that image is sort of evoking that idea. And I think really what's going on in the book, that in the way that the water of an infinity pool connects, or is meant to look as though it connects with the world beyond, the poetry that's inside the poems is very much thinking about how it connects with the world that's beyond the poem. So, how it takes the world in, how it bleeds back out into the world. So in that title poem, there's those 2 lines at the end, which is that sort of moment of kind of formal tricksiness, in the same way that the fourth wall of the infinity pool is a trick. It's a visual trick. It's meant to make you think one thing, but in fact it's doing something else. So that's kind of, I'm trying to represent that in words in a way, and thinking not so much of an actual infinity pool, but a pool of the little pool of infinity that is the poem, if that doesn't sound ridiculous. But, in a way, I think of poems as little kind of places of timelessness, of different kinds of engagement with what goes on in language and what goes on in the world. So they are, I think, little bits of infinity in the way that we still read poems that are hundreds of years old. So the time factor is maybe less. Maybe time works differently in a poem than it works in a job, for example. So, I'm trying to think about that and what actually happens when something happens in a poem. Well, one of the other themes that is in the book is the theme of water. And a lot of the poems are thinking about water in some way. And that might be because I can't afford to live by water, because certainly in Ireland, if you even have a sea view, if you even have a corner of a sea view, it puts the price up by 50,000 euros. So I live inland. I live on the inland side of a mountain range. But I'm about a 40-minute drive away from the ocean. But I do like to go to the ocean, but I kind of figure, okay, if I can't be going to the ocean all the time, so I go there imaginatively. And so one of the things that's going on in those poems, that is, imagine the Atlantic as and the last word there is a job of some kind. So there's a chambermaid, a mechanic, a filmmaker, a journalist, an artist, a bartender, and so on. They're jobs that real people do, as opposed to the jobs that poets do. And I just wanted to see if I could take an aspect of something that the ocean does and the way that the ocean is. So that might be to do with tides. It might be to do with the fact that it has an ocean bed. It might be to do with waves, but an aspect of oceanness, let's call it. And then see if through the good graces of metaphor, I could actually attach those properties of the Atlantic Ocean onto a job that has absolutely nothing to do with the Atlantic Ocean. So it was kind of an exercise. Will metaphor stretch that far? Will I get the Atlantic Ocean vocabulary and imagery and facts to actually graft onto something like a mechanic's job? Is there a way to do it? How do I go about it? Can I find it? And then what you see in these poems is just the product of that kind of fun, but also seriously asking the question, how far can you stretch analogy, metaphor, language? What's it capable of doing? Can you actually take it out of its home place and set it down someplace quite different and hope that it still means something and still works and still has the kind of the gist and resonance that language ought to do within a poem? So that's where that came from, because metaphor is one of the things that keeps me writing. I have no interest in reportage in poems. I'm interested in, for me, it's the fun of it. Like, how do you turn one thing into something else? It's that little alchemist's trick of taking a base metal and turning it into something precious, and just to see if you can perform that kind of magic trick within language, within a poem, plausibly, because that's the thing about metaphor, is it can't be too big or no one will believe it. It can't be too small or people will know it anyway. So you have to try and strike it right, and it takes quite a lot of writing, as it turns out, to try and strike it right. But it's fun. It is also great fun to work with metaphor. I'm really happy to be on the T.S. Eliot Prize shortlist. But I'm especially happy to be on this T.S. Eliot Prize shortlist because I'm in the company of poets, some of whose work has meant a great deal to me over the years. And so to be there with those poets is actually wonderful. And I'm very pleased on behalf of the book, if that doesn't sound ridiculous, but it's the book that has been chosen, not me. It's the book. So for the book to be chosen, I think it feels good. I think the book has conveyed to me that it's really an honor to be on the shortlist. And yeah, whatever happens from here on in, like so far, it's wonderful.